Welcome. Our chalice lighting this morning is by Reeb, who we are called to be. Trajan, will you come up and help me? Hang out right here for a second. Okay. Our chalice is a reminder that in hard times, our ancestors in faith acted with courage to bring hope and safety, to bring life itself to threatened people. We light it today as a reminder of who we are called to be in a world still dangerous and despairing. With courage and faith, we bring ourselves to the work before us.
We are All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church. I am Reverend Ron Phares. Glad to see you all. If you value honest ritual, then come, let us make it. if you find ease in trusted relationship, if you unfurl in reflective space, if you delight in beautiful sound, if you strive for earnest justice, and if you sparkle in abundant fun, and who does not? Then come, one and all, to this care home and carnival of the soul, this service of all souls, you. Will you take a breath with me? This is our sacred hour, our holy place where beloved community cultivates meaning and makes of this experience a kind of magic. The eco-theologian and mythologist Sophie Strand writes that magic is an escape from this world into this world. Magic doesn't take us out of our ecosystem, it roots us more deeply into them. This soulful ecosystem welcomes your magic, as well as the magic of those rooted into it before us. Those who brought us here, those brought here, and those who were here already. The Ute, Comanche, Arapaho, Apache, Cheyenne, Kiowa, Pawnee, and Lakota. And before them, the aspen and oak and pine, the waters, the soil, the air. We are that water and soil. We breathe their breath. May our welcome heal and celebrate them as our welcome seeks to heal and celebrate each and all gathered here. And in that light, let us give a special welcome to those gathered to us from far away. Wave to those folks who are looking at us from home. Hi, y'all. Thanks for coming in. We are All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church. Let us proclaim our community in song.
This is 1051 in this hymnal. If you'd like to read the music, please stand as you are willing and able. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises
Joys and sorrows is one way that you use keep the ritual and practice of holding one another in community. We do not light candles because we believe they have a supernatural power to them, but we do believe that there is power in standing together in these moments. The ritual of the sharing embodies this belief. If you are so moved, please share your joys or sorrows on the yellow and blue cards in the pew backs, and then we will recognize that to be in community means to be a part of each other's stories. In joy and in sorrow, we do not walk alone.
We received some difficult news this week as a congregation, as longtime member and dear friend to so many, Dale Kimmerer passed away earlier this week. And I just want to let you know that just witnessing the outpouring of sentiment regarding Dale from the various corners of this congregation has been touching and inspiring, and we will be having a celebration of his life and a remembering of him to the ancestors, an occasion to do that at some point in the future that has not been determined yet, but you'll certainly know when we know. That said, I would invite our remote viewers, if we have any joys or sorrows from that corner of the world, if you could read them for us, Andy.
Yes, certainly. I have to scroll. Give me a moment. We have a joy from Kent in finally recovering from long COVID. Heidi expresses joy and sorrow over the loss of Dale Kimmer, joy to have known him, sorrow at his loss. And Jennifer Centric is a longtime UU from High Plains. She's wanting to attend in person, but health issues make it difficult. She's in security, and we've already got one of our welcome people trying to help her find a ride. And I believe that's all we have.
From the pews, our dear friend Jeff, 55 years old, had fought brain cancer for 2 years. Yesterday, he lost his fight and made his transition. Please keep his wife and children in your hearts today. We will miss him. My wonderful, beloved grandpa has transitioned to hospice care, and I am heartbroken. Question about how to fight for DEI mission in a preschool co-op. It's hard to stay hopeful. I'm saddened by all the horrors going on all over the world, and especially in the Middle East. Sorrow for the death of Dale Kimmerer. Another grieving for the incomparable Dale Kimmerer. So grateful that all souls made it possible for me to know him and call him a friend. 2 of my cousins in Texas and Kansas died this past week from long battles with illness, one from cancer and one from Parkinson's. For their families, including my 99-year-old aunt, who has now outlived 2 of her children. And Ellen Johnson Fay, a former minister emerita here, had a letter to the Gazette editor in Thursday's paper suggesting support for a Palestinian-Israeli organization called Comrades in Peace, and a joy that Lou Finney is here today.
Oh.
Oh, thank you for welcoming me a few weeks ago at my lowest point ever. I am grateful for you all, and we're glad that you're here. A joy that Corbin and Miles next door can play and carve pumpkins. A joy for Dale Kimmerer. What an inspiration, what a UU. Ginny O'Neill has joy that after 2 months of messing around, interfacing with real estate agents, the insurance company, and I am finally taking possession of my new home. Hooray. We are delighted to see a former member, Lou Finney, return to visit today. Lou, you're a very popular man. We're glad to see you. You might have to come back, I don't know. Okay. Current member, Lou Finney. I'll see you on Zoom until next April. Love, Ed. All right, Ed. Let these sorrows open our hearts. Let our hearts break open. They are ours. They have been ours. They will be ours. They're experiences that we share, and they connect us. We connect through our heartbreak. Let the joys turn that heartbreak into an expansiveness that includes everybody in this room, redoubles our connection, and turns sorrow into joy. We're grateful for your concerns, and for these sentiments that knit us closer as a community. If you would please join me in a moment of silence to honor these joys and sorrows. Perhaps you can reflect on one of them, or perhaps they knit together in some kind of collage for you. This is your opportunity to meditate on them for a brief moment. We'll begin with a breath.
It's time for everyone, and if all the kids would just come up here and you can see I'm not Molly. Molly is with her family and ancestors in Nebraska. So she asked me to read the story. So anybody else wants to come up? How you doing, kiddo? And just so you guys know, the story will be up here and there. And I know adult UUs like to get ahead of readings, but you can't because it's going to be matched up with the book. And the book is Be a Good Ancestor. And Reverend Ron talked about ancestors. The book was written, and the illustrations really are beautiful, by two indigenous people and illustrated by one. Do you know what indigenous means? It's when someone has lived there before you. And here we may call them Native Americans. And these people are from Canada. They're from a beautiful place called British Columbia. And the illustrations are marvelous. It's a story about how we're all connected. Be a good ancestor. Be a good ancestor with water. Raindrops become puddles, puddles become streams, streams become rivers, and rivers become life. Be a good ancestor with the land. Seeds become seedlings, seedlings become trees, trees become forests, and forests become oxygen. Be a good ancestor with living things that fly. Eggs become hatchlings, hatchlings become fledglings, fledglings become eagles, and eagles become iconic. Be a good ancestor with living things that swim. Eggs become fry, fry becomes alevins, alevins become sockeyes, and sockeyes become nourishment. Be a good ancestor with living things that walk. Newborns become cubs, cubs become young bears become grizzlies, and grizzlies become balance. Be a good ancestor with your neighbors. Neighbors become friends. Friends become communities. Communities become nations. And nations become allies. Be a good ancestor with your thoughts. Thoughts become ideas. Ideas become actions. And actions become movements. And movements become change. Be a good ancestor with your words. Words become expressions. Expressions become stories. Stories become narratives. And narratives become truth. Be a good ancestor with your feelings. Feelings become compassion. Compassion becomes understanding. And understanding becomes beliefs. And beliefs become values. Be a good ancestor with yourself. Children become adults. Adults become leaders. Leaders become elders. And elders become ancestors. And you all will be ancestors. You might not be now, but your mom, dad, grandparents, cousins, other people that have influenced you, those are ancestors. And then one day, you will be an ancestor and people will think about you in that way. Okay, we're gonna get sung out and go on downstairs.
Good morning. I'm Lynne Casebeer. I've been a member for quite a few years, not as long as Lou. But my reflection is about my ancestors. My dad was a child of the silent generation. He was born in 1934, and his dad served in World War II, training military dogs in Hawaii. During those years of my dad's boyhood, when Grandpa was gone, he and his mother developed a very close relationship. When my grandmother died in childbirth in 1950, my dad was 15 and his younger brother was 10. As my uncle told me just a few years ago, there was no therapy, no talking about it. I just remember Uncle Lou telling me that Mom was gone, that was God's plan, and nothing more was ever said. I guess that's why they called it the silent generation. I have a vivid memory of making a lemon icebox cake with my dad when I was probably 8, about the age that he had been when he was his mom's main companion. He shared how he and his mom would bake together a lot, and that this particular recipe was one of their favorites. My grandmother Audrey had 4 sisters and 3 brothers. 3 of the sisters lived in the Fort Collins area, where my great-grandparents had immigrated directly from England. Throughout my childhood, we would stop in and see my great-aunts when we were up north for swim meets or coming back from skiing. I don't remember any stories about my grandmother from these visits, just news of their own lives and their children's. My dad's first cousin hosted a Hatton family reunion every summer, and it was a highlight of my year, playing badminton with cousins, first, second, once removed. I never understood all that, I don't get that straight. But enjoying the homemade ice cream, listening to the adults talk, I loved being part of this family, even though I never even knew my direct connection to them. My dad made a point to stop and visit many of his aunts, uncles, and cousins, first, second, etc., when he traveled across the West in his retirement. He kept all of their holiday cards and read and reread the letters that they included. After his death in 2020, I went through boxes of photos, cards, and letters from these ancestors, hating to throw them away, but not really wanting them piled in boxes in my basement for my children to go through 20 or 30 years from now. I wrote an email to this extended family after he died. It went like this. Thank you for the many years of staying in touch with my dad. He truly appreciated it and maintained his identity with your family until the end. I too appreciate the feeling of belonging to a wider family, and I wish you all the best. In these strange times, as well as more normal ones, remember to hold on to these connections. Love, grace, and forgiveness go a long way in making goodbye an easier thing to say. I think this story of my recent ancestors has formed my understanding of the importance of these connections. It may not always be blood relatives with whom I maintain them. My family of origin keeps shrinking. But I have friends from various times in my life, 50, 40, 20-year-long relationships, childhood neighbors, teammates, former All Souls members, and I think about them often. I make it a point to text a happy birthday message or send a holiday card, and sometimes I drop in on them unexpectedly. They are my wider family now, and maintaining connections with them must be in my bones. And we have an opportunity to connect again here at church after a many-year hiatus, thanks to COVID. We haven't been able to have the best thing on Friday night in Colorado Springs, and that is the incredibly wonderful time spending thousands of our own dollars to help All Souls. It's auction time. After 4 years, our biggest fundraising event, emphasis on fun, is back. For weeks now, we've invited you to donate items for bidding, and you've stepped up big time. Over 200 items have been donated, including many multi-seat events. So you have over 400 opportunities to win. You feel like Bob Barker. But you can't win unless you enter, and you can't bid unless you're a registered bidder. So if you haven't registered yet, please check out our auction website, and if you're not sure if you're registered, check in at the auction table in the small hall after the service. Once you're registered, you'll be able to bid in 3 different auctions. The online auction starts on Tuesday and runs through November 5th. The live auction and silent auction will happen on auction night, which is Friday, November 3rd. There will be childcare available, and if you're unable to come to auction night, you can still bid. Just register a friend to be your proxy, and we can help you out at the auction table with that. There will be a sneak peek slideshow on all the monitors in the Great Hall after the service. And so now we can make our ancestors proud, be generous, and have a ton of fun doing it. We can do that Friday night, and we can do that right now. An offering will be gratefully received. Let us be grateful for all those who share their gifts, for we are enriched by their giving. And let us be grateful even for our needs, so that we may learn from the generosity of others.
We are so lucky to hear that song, but I get to be particularly lucky because I got to see Jay throughout that whole time. And the look on your face, Jay, is just one of such joy and curiosity at the same time. It's absolutely, it reminded me of like a baby, like a toddler baby, a baby after they pass gas. They're like, oh. Which I probably just ruined that look forever, but I don't mean to. It was delightful, thank you. Yeah. So my job from this location, sanctuary, chancel, altar, pulpit, is primarily, I think, to prepare us to do a thing, or to keep doing a thing, or sometimes to, dear God, please stop doing that thing. And then sometimes we actually do the thing here. When we do the thing here, it's called ceremony. Ceremony is the doing of a thing that is both in and of itself the experience of that thing and a deep, embodied muscle memory building, trajectory setting that thing points us to. So, for instance, next week, in our All Souls Samhain ceremony, we hope to do the thing. To conjure a real, felt experience. To jar the window open just a bit so that a little transformation and grounding can get through. You might next week earn yourself a surprise. You might have a genuine spiritual experience. In a UU church? You might. You might not. But that's our invitation. And I tell you truly, I have seen it happen. Ceremony is analogous to setting the table, which in fact is what we will literally do next Sunday, in the hope that a visitor will sit and break bread with us. Now, the visitor may or may not show up, but at least in our invitation, we are prepared to receive them and can thereby devote our entire attention to the news that they bring. So in this case, visitor is my generic term for an encounter with life that may go by many names: God, Spirit, Fae, Cloud and Wind, Coyote, Coincidence. Whatever its name, whatever its face, in essence, it's a messenger, a message. And in that sense, no different from you or I. All entwined expressions of being, us and the others. But these ones, these messengers are special. What we're courting in ceremony are holy transmissions of concentrated potency. Experiences that are pointedly and personally relevant. They matter much. Experiences of this kind have formative and transformative power. So that's what we're going to be about next week. Now, certainly, it is the case that we receive such messages without arranging the cup, plate, or tablecloth. Visitations do indeed occur outside of ceremony, but in those cases, we tend to not be prepared to receive their potency, and so the experience of them is something between unbidden and violation. It's like when someone just pops over and your house is a mess. You haven't done your hair. There's underwear on the lampshade. The cat litter hasn't been changed in too long. I've probably just given you too much information. And you have to choose to pay attention to either this visitor or to dinner prep and the load of laundry that you should have done last week. It's hard to pay attention in that case, this inbreaking visitation of the Spirit. It's hard to make sense in that case. It's hard to be polite. So if you visit your relatives, maybe an email first, Ceremony, on the other hand, is spiritually considerate. As a proper invitation, it allows both visitor, God, spirit, fae, cloud and wind, coyote, coincidence, and host, us, to prepare for the exchange, to make space and do honor. Ceremony turns visitation into embassy. As such, it comes with an extra ladle of responsibility at its conclusion, some follow-up, a promise, a commitment. And that, my friends, is what we are hoping to do next week. This week, we're still in prep. We're not doing the thing, we're preparing to do the thing. Not only for ceremony, mind you, but certainly for ceremony. So today, we focus on the idea of ceremony and the idea of ancestors in order to prepare us for the experience next week. And this is the right time for it, of course, as proclaimed by the leaves, spectacular death flourish, the shortening days, the quality of light. Summer is perishing, death is in the air. And we are in a time of transition, seasonally, culturally, congregationally. A liminal time. Our ancestors saw fit in this season to turn their attention to their honored dead. And this makes sense. This makes bone sense. And thankfully, ancestor veneration, connection, and healing seem to be making a bit of a comeback these days. It's a thing again. I can't help but wonder if it is so because we sense that our world is dying. Or maybe it's due to our recognition, perhaps too late, that we are not the masters of our fate, that our claim to dominion is unwarranted and destructive, that our being is and always has been precarious and thus miraculous. And that reckoning with that frailty and uncertainty, our eyes have once more been turned to the one certain thing, death, in order to transform it from terror and defeat into honor and creation. Or maybe it's just my algorithm. I don't know. But effectively, ancestors as other, as visitor, as messenger, are an ancient mediating story between us and being. And remember, stories are mediums and lenses for how we comprehend the world. Ancestors may be more than that, but they are at least a story that enables us to mediate and understand the world. So in this sense, the ancestors do the work for a season at least that the God of Abraham did for a time. But culturally speaking, in a classic, it's not you, it's us maneuver, we fired that guy. It just wasn't the right fit anymore. But the absence of that story, the absence of the story of the God of Abraham in our lives has left a gap. We tried to fill it with materialism. But no matter how much we wanted it to, materialism simply could not fill that gap adequately because it misses on fulfilling our need for connection and meaning. Materialism mistakenly conflates meaning with knowledge, but that leaves us cold. And so we have this unmet need. And we live in collectively perilous times, So turning to the story of our ancestors is a means of meeting that need for connection, even as we reckon with our inevitable mortality through that connection. And then we've also been coming to a reckoning of how we are on the planet and how we are with each other. We are recognizing that cultural patterns that once comforted us are in fact laden with inequity, separation, fear, and selfishness, which leads to violence, genocide, and ecocide. These historical patterns are obviously not in line with our own hopes and expectations for ourselves. They're not in line with the story that we've been told about who we are. And a story of this kind and purpose, no matter how fanciful, must carry some integrity with it, must carry some bone truth to it, must have resonance with matter and history. Otherwise, it's so much delicious poison. Our stories and the patterns in which we have come to be are out of line. We are not in alignment with the Tao, the organic and earthly unfolding and perpetuation of an intricately interdependent reality. We're out of whack, and we know it. We do not want the world that we created. And yet, we're also grateful, and rightfully so, I'd say, for our being in it. So this is a bit of a puzzle, and we wonder, how did we get here? So we turn to our ancestors as messengers, as personalized conduits. We turn to our ancestors as personifications of meaning, and we turn to our ancestors to respectfully inquire, what the actual F? What were you thinking? Why? Why did you do that? But of course we know why. We know why. It's because they were scared and scarred. And we know this because we're scared and scarred. And we know that because in ways both spiritual and practical, both material, meaningful, numinous, cellular, we know that because they are us. So do you know the thought experiment that ponders if Odysseus, on his long journey home, had to gradually replace every plank on his ship? Is it the same ship from start to finish? In some ways, like the tale it alludes to, this same question can be put to us about us. Most of our bodily cells are replaced every 7 to 10 years. By the time you're 50, almost every one of the 30 trillion human cells in your body has reproduced and died at least once. There are a few cells in your heart and brain and eyes that are with us from Troy to Ithaca, but materially speaking, you have already died and been reborn. But I imagine that you sense that you are still the same you. Even though the road may be long and winding, your experience of yourself is one of uninterrupted continuity. But that just is materially not true. It's more true that what you sense as you is a story. Now, this should not diminish what you sense as you. We're not lowering you to the level of story, right? Story, we're leveling you up to the level of story. It should illustrate the reality, the experiential potency of a story. So you are an experienced story of yourself, a narrative understanding of actual events, a historical fiction where fiction is sacred. You are like one of those movies that has at the opening caveat, based on real events, which is intended to secure both the authority of fact and the permission to fib a bit so that the facts are allowed to communicate more powerfully. So you're a story. You're a story. You replace yourself materially, God willing, at least once in your lifetime, like Odysseus's boat. And yet you are you. So if we broaden the aperture a bit and apply that same kind of thinking to ancestry, what might happen? Bodies perish, material composts, flesh to soil, and from that life, yes, new material, yes, fruit. Such is the way of things. But more to the point, there is a continuity of identity over generations. A story, even when it's unwanted. Now, much like our own reproducing cells, our ancestors do pass on DNA, and that DNA carries not just blueprints, but also experiences, or at least their epigenetic impact, which switches on or off aspects of our genes. So in a sense, we are more materially ancestor than individual. We are formed by their experiences, their decisions, and the story that we have about them. And this is certainly not limited to genetics at all. We carry in us lineage and culture and history. We're not just formed by it, we are it. It is our story. And that packs in two crucial considerations. For as robustly populated with acts of courage, love, sheer brilliance, and generosity as our ancestors were, they were also deeply troubled and troublemaking, likely as are we. Trauma causes trauma. It makes for poor conditions for decisions and often leads to repeated violence, either interpersonally or genocidally. We are a product of that trauma source. And since we are maybe understanding that we are the same ship as our ancestors in a meaningful way, we are the trauma source. And while that is cause for sorrow, it is also cause for hope. Because recognizing that means that we have an opportunity to change course. But to do so, we must heal the past, reckon with it, make amends, and change direction. This is deeply entwined with the work of anti-racism, ecological relationship building, and spiritual enlivenment. And it is absolutely critical that we do this work. Because if it is true that our ancestors live in us, it is also true that we live in our descendants. Same ship. If there is to be a future, it's in the past. To heal the future, we must heal the past. We are that nexus. The past lives in us. The future lives in us. It's a story with life or death consequences. Stories need structure. We are a structure. Our ancestors are a structure. All expressions of being, bodied messages, visitors. So my job from this location is primarily to prepare us to do a thing. And I hope I've done a little bit of that, because next Sunday, we will do the thing. We will invite a message, a messenger, a visitor, and make of it an embassy, and engage with that visitor as an opportunity to transform the past or ourselves or the future, or maybe just to say hello. And as with any embassy, this will come with that extra ladle of responsibility at its conclusion, but this commitment will be made easier, or at least organic, for as we experience the dissolution of those chronological categories, past, present, future, we will sense an expansion of identity, an expansion of connection and of responsibility and of hope. It's an opportunity afforded us by this liminal season, a time of turning into death, turning into tragedy, and finding there not only life, finding in death and tragedy not only life, but ultimately hope, which is to say, love. And in case I ended that on a quiet note, we will find there hope, which is ultimately love. There we go.
I'm sorry. I'm going to make you do it again. I'm going to make you fly the plane while you're building it. We're going to learn a song on the fly, but it's such a perfect song. We're going to sing We Rise by Batya Levine. Please rise with me in body, rise with me in spirit. Yes, the choir has had a sneak preview, but just join in as soon as you are comfortable. Words are on the screen. We rise, humbly hearted, rise, won't be divided, rise, with spirit to guide us, rise, in hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here, in hope, in prayer, we're right here, in hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here, in hope, in prayer, we're right here, and we rise, all of the children rise, elders with wisdom rise, ancestors surround us rise, in hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here, in hope, in prayer, we're right here, in hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here, in hope, in prayer, we're right here, and we rise, up from the wreckage, rise, with tears and with courage, rise, fighting for life. Rise. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here, and we rise, humbly hearted, rise, won't be divided, rise, with spirit to guide us, rise.
Remain standing for the benediction as we leave this sacred place and time that we have gathered together, that we have created, but not just us, not just us. Our ancestors have helped create this point too. Our descendants have helped build this place too, because they all live in us. And as we leave this sacred time and place that we have created together, let us go knowing that we are the nexus of the past, present, and future, that the responsibility is ours. And don't forget to bring your memento mori next week as we remember our dearly departed, as we get that responsibility ladled into us and rise.
Let's just do that chorus one more time. Ready? We rise, humbly hearted, rise, won't be divided, rise, with spirit to guide us, rise.